And then the market turned, or you sensed the market was turning?
No, the market turned. The government of Canada introduced, the federal government introduced a policy called the National Energy Policy, which, again, socialism gone nuts. We had a made-in-Canada oil price established, believe it or not. And so the oil industry suddenly came to a grinding halt, and the whole real estate development business crashed with it. And all of the buildings that were being built were progressively being vacated, and office rents went from $25 a foot down to basically $1.
Oh. So you see that happening, and you get into a predicament with a lender. Can you tell the students what happened with that lender? And
Well,
how
I
you solved that?
had two predicaments. One was that the building I built was a 230,000 square foot office building, and I had leased it. Some interesting stories. I don't know how much time we got, but anyway, I leased it to our national oil company, Petro-Canada, for 20 years, with a rent of, regrettably had rent reviews in the lease so that the rent could go up or down at the insistence of my partner. They believed that we were in an era of inflation, and so they wanted the rent to adjust every 5 years. And so we did the deal with them, and against that lease, I was able to establish a line of credit with my bank of $3 million. And I borrowed a couple of $1 million against that, and then they hadn't read the lease very closely, so they didn't realize that the rent could actually go down. So I had 2 or 3 years when I realized the market was in a very, very serious state and was not going to recover. That I could want to do one of two things. I could either just take the cash flow and pay off the bank, or alternatively borrow the money, the balance of my line of credit, and try to find some substitute income.
So they, excuse me. I'm going to stand up for a second because I'm going to clear my throat. I'm going to let. Sorry.
Want me to carry on? I'll tell the story. You don't have to ask me the questions
exactly.
that way.
Why choke over here in the corner?
Actually, I was choking at the time, I got to tell you.
So tell them about, tell them about what you got.
So
you
anyway,
give it a year.
I'll let you off the hook. Do I get paid if I take over? No.
Yeah, you'd love to have my I'll switch salaries with you anytime.
I don't think you. So anyway, what happened was that I decided to find some substitute income from a different source, and I was looking for a business that I might be able to acquire that would give me substitute cash flow. And one of our tenants was growing rapidly, whilst most of the others were actually shrinking. And the tenant that was growing was a private vocational school called Career College. And so I approached the Career College, the owner, and bought the company. And when I bought the company, it was doing about $1.8 million in revenue. It was netting about $600,000 pre-tax. And so I bought the company from her for $2 million, $1 million down, and the balance to come over a couple of years. And borrowed, essentially ran my line of credit up to the hilt. And then took over running the business, and met my current wife there. And we grew the business over the next 2 years to doing $7 million a year in revenue. And we're able to pay make a significant dent in my debt to the bank. The story I think that David would like me to tell was that in the midst of this process, before the cash flow really started to kick in, I'd made some contribution. I think my line of credit was down to about $2.8 million. And the bank called my loan and said they didn't want to be involved in real estate anymore, and they wanted me to pay back my $2.8 million. And they gave me 30 days to do it. I got to tell you, that's a pretty frightening position to be in. And so I flew down to Toronto, and I got to see one of the senior executives of the bank, and persuaded him to lower his ambition and to let me pay back $1 million within 1 year. That was the deal I made with him, and get my line down to $1.8 million. I was not sure how I was going to do it. I hoped the cash flow from the school business would start to kick in, because we had to recapitalize the school business a bit as well. Anyway, about 2 months into this process, a friend of mine came to see me, and he said that he'd got a piece of real estate that was heavily underwater. And his client wanted to sell it. They bought the building for $15 million and wanted to sell it, and they were prepared to take 7 or 8 for it. It was leased to the government of Alberta. It was a 57,000 square foot building. It was leased to the government of Alberta at a rent of about $25 a foot. But current rents for that stage had fallen to about 12, 13, and declining fast. And there was only 18 months left on the lease. So no one wanted to buy the building. And he came to me, he said, have you got any ideas as to how I might sell this building? And I said, yeah, I do actually. I'll buy it. So I made a deal with him. I put down $50,000 as a deposit. I got a deferred closing of 3 months, and which I was surprised they took. And then I went to the government, and I said to the government, they were desperate too. Revenues were falling for the government. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll cut your rent in half to $12.50 a foot if you'll extend your lease by another 7 years. And they leapt at it with the idea. And then got them to sign that lease and sold the building before I had to close. And made $1 million to pay back the bank.